Well, welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see at least a few of you, and thank you for coming out on, or staying in, as it were, on a lovely June evening. So I am here at the Hillside Club. My name is Arlene Baxter. I'm the first vice president, and it's my pleasure to be the organizer of the Fireside series, of which this is our last Fireside for this season. We will be having a special event in July, and we'll talk a bit more about that at the end. But for now, it is my pleasure to welcome Allison Greenland. I don't know how many of you have been watching the Bring Back the Native Plant Tour that Kathy Kramer has organized for many years. This year was an extended version over several Sundays, virtually. I watched a lot of the hours, and I plan to go back and watch more online because those are available on the Bring Back the Natives website. So that's a good source. Tonight, we're very fortunate to have a speaker here that will be sharing her passion for plants. She's a plant person through and through. She is the owner of Moon Pie Garden Company. And I love her statement. She said, which she uses to help combat plant blindness and help her clients fall in love with plants and become stewards of the land. A wonderful mission. Previously, she was public programs coordinator at the Jepson Herbarium at UC Berkeley. She received a BS in plant biology and an MS in horticulture from UC Davis. And it's my pleasure to welcome Allison Greenland. Welcome to the Hillside Club.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Okay, let's get started. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. I think at this point in the era of Zoom, it's such an honor to still have your time on your screens. And anyone who wants to chat with me about plants, I always get so excited. So it's such an honor to be here. And thank you for the lovely introduction. I was tearing up a little bit just because I didn't think you would be rereading that out loud, and I was like, yeah, I really do want to like help combat plant blindness, and I hope you guys will all feel the same at the end of this talk. Now, this is a short talk. This is going to be the tip of the iceberg. It's going to kind of stir the pot, I think, is a really accurate way to describe this talk. There's so much to discuss here because native plant gardens are really the intersection of botany, of horticulture, of sustainable lifestyle. And it was almost overwhelming to decide where to begin. Well, let's dive in. I did have a little bit, oh, there we go. I did have a little bit about myself, which was more or less covered by Arlene. My history is really about connecting people with plants, and I've done that in realms of public horticulture, working for the UC Davis Arboretum and the Betty Ford Alpine Gardens in Vail, Colorado. And as Arlene mentioned, I previously worked in education program management for the Jepson Herbarium. That's the dead plant museum at UC Berkeley. The living plant museum would be the Botanic Garden. And currently I run Moon Pie Gardens. I'm a native plant garden designer. So I help people select their plant species, place them. I do full installations. And really along the way, I'm helping people learn about their plants because the gardens are only as meaningful as about what you know about them. But I do want to take a moment and highlight one of my most favorite photos I found while I was preparing for this presentation. This was me teaching a bunch of Girl Scouts who wanted to earn their botany badge. And that was probably one of my favorite botanical education memories. That was several years before the pandemic. So before the era of Zoom talks. A little tiny overview. I would say this is like an overview of an overview that I'm going to be giving you guys tonight. I think it's important before we talk about native gardens to talk just a little bit about how native plants fill out the landscape. Again, just brushing the surface here. And the reason I think that's important is because sometimes that is understanding our wild landscapes and the vast amount of diversity that's out there, especially when it comes to plant diversity in California, that is really the best illustrator of the importance of native plant gardens. And I take a little bit of a funky approach with land stewardship. I think that'll be illustrated in my talk, a little bit of a non-conventional definition. And then most importantly, we're gonna play a fun game. Hope you guys are down for some, I don't know if I'd call it trivia per se, but a fun botany game. So who's got their botany drinks all ready for this evening's talk? I hope you do. First bit of trivia, name a botanical drink. In the chat, you can do it in the chat. Wait, I don't have my chat open. Hold on, everyone. Let me have my IT person help me open my chat box. Oh, there it is. Oh, look, they're coming in. Oh, this is so sweet. We've got mint juleps, fabulous and seasonal. Mint tea, same. Chamomile, orange juice, hollered, oranges all year round in the Bay Area. Yerba buena tea, wow, excellent. Jim, really shining. Thank you, this is so sweet. Oh my gosh, it's like you all knew that you were supposed to bring your botanical drinks. Oh, but you know, turns out botany is everywhere at all times if you haven't realized that already. Okay, so where were we? I'm going to try to keep this interactive and fun here. So here we go. Exhibit A. This is the silky beach pea. This is not in a garden. This is a plant in the wild of California. Its Latin name is Lathyrus littoralis in the family Fabaceae. So my background is in botany. So I always, when I start talks about plants, I always want to make sure people have a little bit of you know, unnecessary jargon, of course, but also I want you to have a strong foundation in the plants we're talking about. And I won't overwhelm you with too much jargon. This plant will look a little familiar, hopefully. The species is maybe not so much, but it resembles a very famous cousin that is the sweet pea, Lathyrus latifolia. And but this one's only found in the north coast of California in some sandy dunes. So this is our example plant. Make sure. Where is it found? It's found in this place called the Lanphier Dunes in the Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge. Anyone in the chat want to say, someone finally said gin, which was, it's not one. Oh, by the way, I'm drinking mint tea. I forgot to say that. But what came to my mind when I said, what botanical drink are you drinking? I was like, who's drinking gin? Someone's got to say that. Margarita, gosh, also a good one. So now in the chat, has anyone been to the Lanphier Dunes?
Where?
The Lanphier Dunes. They're in the Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge in Humboldt County in the far north coast of California. Oh, Jim has been. Excellent. Well, I chose the Lanphier Dunes as an example of a plant habitat to talk about. Near Fort Bragg, not so much. I think it was near Arcata. Arcata would be your closest city. So it is the most, it was the, how you say, like pilot restoration project of a coastal dune plant community. So it's it was the nation's first attempt at restoring dune communities that had suffered habitat loss from mostly European, I believe, European dune grass. And it has been a big success story. Now, my talk today is really not per se a talk about conservation and restoration practices. That's a huge field. Maybe you've already had a talk on that, but it's important to note when we talk about our native gardens and the systems that they represent, just that how fragile these systems are and how much we need to lobby for them. So I was excited to show you this one. It has some awesome plants. I'm going to show you some more of them. But first, Here, so this is a satellite image of the Lanphier Dunes, and this is, some examples of many individuals of the beach sweet pea, and all of the plants of a single species in a given area. We call that the population, the plant population. So that's a subject. The population can be subjective because it could be all of the individuals of the species in the dunes, but it could also be all of the individuals all over the coast of California, okay? I'm really building some context here. Some other awesome plants. Now, no matter what the topic is, any talk about plants has to have awesome pictures of plants or else you've flopped. So here are some of my favorites found in that system. Silver top, the scientific name is Glenia littoralis, and this is in the APACE. If you're feeling like you're seeing some doppelgangers here and this plant looks familiar, it's because it's a California native plant that is related to some of our favorite culinary plants: carrot, cilantro, celery, parsnip, cumin. Anyone have another example in the chat of familiar plants in the APACE, the carrot family? I think you probably can see by now. Sand verbena. I love bringing up sand verbena because we have a lot of verbenas in our gardens. And there are a couple. This one is not one that people plant that often in their gardens, but I like to show it off as a unique coastal plant. But there are some awesome native verbenas that are a great replacement for our more common ornamental verbenas. Okay, this one's one of my favorites, coastal sagewort, Artemisia pycnocephala. This is in the Asteraceae. This is the sunflower family, and it's one of the 3 biggest plant families in the world, meaning it has the most taxa. It's very diverse. It's the other plant families. Fun fact: the 3 biggest plant families in the world is the grass family, the Poaceae, the orchid family, Orchidaceae, and the sunflower family, Asteraceae. Ooh, this wasn't part of what I was featuring, but there is a beautiful coastal buckwheat right next to that sage, in case you were wondering what that is. And it looks like we've got some maybe Dudleya or sedum in the background flowering there. And if you can see that like yellow burst over there, it's not really the focus. But the reason I like to bring coastal sagewort into the picture here, and this is one of the reasons I chose this system, the coastal dune system, to use as my example, is because it turns out this plant is very popular in the native plant cultivation world. So you might start to familiarize yourself and see plants in native systems that are sometimes almost more common in our cultivated systems. Similar with the pink sea thrift, Armeria maritima. This is in a lesser represented family in California called the Plumbaginaceae. And this one should look familiar if if you've got your botany goggles on when you're walking down the street. You should see this one around. It's very coastal in California, but I swear I saw this one being sold at Home Depot last week, and Home Depot is not known for having a great selection of California native plants. So when you see a native plant there, it's a tried and true, what I call a bulletproof individual. So here we go. Those are some members of the coastal dune community, and collectively they create a plant community. And I use this example here. This, by the way, just to be clear, there are many more plants in the coastal dune community. I just chose a few to highlight just to kind of as a teaser. We could probably spend, the reason I know this community well is because when I worked at the Jepson Herbarium, we spent 4 days looking at just this community. So there's a lot to discover and know here. But I use this example because I want to illustrate plant communities and how our gardens should be mirroring plant communities, and they should be mirroring ecosystems. Now, I don't want to mislead you here, because if you live in Berkeley or the surrounding Berkeley area, your garden is probably not specifically going to mirror a coastal dune community because you probably don't have that much sand in your soil. I chose this one because I thought it was special and exemplary, and I like to feature really exciting plants for you to see. But we're going to look at some other plants that are common in the chaparral and mixed chaparral communities of Alameda and Contra Costa counties, and that are all-stars in gardens. And of course, these plant communities, they form our landscapes and the foundation for thriving wildlife. This is my one token wildlife slide, because wildlife is often at the forefront of imagery associated with conservation of wildlands and natural resources. And you know, the running joke of that I always use that a great mentor once said to me was, you know, plants don't have eyes and cry, so they aren't as easy to preserve. And here we have, you know, the beautiful bobcat. This is, let me make sure I have the name right. The leaf cutter bee, unique to this coastal dune system in the Lanphier Dunes, and the white-tailed kite. Maybe some birders in the audience familiar with this bird. Anyone's checked this off their bird list? Let us know in the chat. Oh, I'm a little behind in the chat, by the way. For those of you who answered my little quiz on members of the carrot family, yes, Queen Anne's lace is in that family. It's a great garden plant, but it can be a terrible weed in certain places that receive a lot of precipitation, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Cow parsley, yes, or cow parsnip, yes. Celery, yes. Poison hemlock, yes. I know, so culinary and so toxic, that family, what a complex one. Okay, yeah. So Jim says, I know the white-tailed kite as the black-shouldered kite. That's, you know, that's usually where taxonomists would say their token line. That's why common names are complicated, but yeah, probably the same thing. Okay, where were we? So why do I show you all of this? It comes down to a very simple concept. We do protect what we know. Humans are so much more likely to protect plants, wildlife, natural systems, natural resources when they have a personal relationship with it. So as an outreach professional, both in my work with gardens and not in gardens, I always feel like the driving point is to help people put on their plant goggles and form a relationship with the plants around them. And when you plant a native garden, you are doing that. You become a steward of your land and a steward of your garden, and you have no idea how many other people are suddenly going to be forming a relationship with your plants as they walk by, and how much impact that can have. So don't take this lightly. This is like small steps with big impacts. What we teach each other passively, both actively and passively. Okay. So we're going to skip that one. I think I said overwhelmed. When I was making this talk, I probably was feeling kind of overwhelmed. You know, sometimes when we think so much about our role as land stewards and how far-reaching our choices are in the protection of our lands, I definitely feel overwhelmed. And so the irony, though, is that gardens can advocate for our lands, and they could also be are places of calm and places of Zen comes to mind. So I really advocate for anyone who is a tender of land to use their land in a meaningful way, ecologically, because it will have political and cultural implications. And furthermore, it's important to note that not making any choice is making a choice. And this is really zooming in on parcels of land, private land that people own and their choices around how they own it. Not managing our land is also land management, and it has a lot of far-reaching impacts that I want people to be aware of. It's a tough world out there. We are so busy, and it is difficult sometimes to, I don't know, stop and smell the roses, but it's also difficult to manage your roses and to prune them. And we need to be rethinking our relationship with the land, because we all have a responsibility in managing it. This picture here hopefully looks familiar to all of you, because if you live in the Bay Area, you should be definitely familiar with the plant on the right. That is Oxalis presbyoperi, the sour grass, a lot of people call it. Let's see, sorry, I'm just checking the chat here. Okay, thank you, David, for the confirmation about the common name mix-up. Yes, and Richard, just jumping ahead of us a little bit, and yeah, this on the left is actually our native oxalis. So a lot of people mistake the yellow plant for a clover. It's not a clover. It's in its own family called the Oxalidaceae. And there are native species in the same genus, Oxalis. And I apologize that I'm missing the name on the slide, but I'll type it into the chat here. Oxalis presbyoperi. That's our non-native one, the yellow one. And then on the right, we have Oxalis oregana. So the one on the right, you're probably familiar with, but I don't know how many of you know the story. It was brought over in horticulture itself. It is native to South Africa, which is a fellow Mediterranean region of the world. There are 8 Mediterranean regions of the world. And in the horticulture industry, we've done a lot of swapping of plants from the Mediterranean regions of Europe, of South Africa, of Australia. They all grow kind of well in each other's zones, as do others, plants of other parts of the world as well, but it's very common. And interestingly, Oxalis presbyoperi is actually pretty rare in South Africa. I think it's like a botanical treasure there. And it is a mess here in the Bay Area. It is not to be understated how much habitat destruction this plant has. Fun fact or unfun fact about this plant is that in its native habitat, it produces fruits that produce seeds that help it spread. Yeah, you know, I checking in on the chat. People have lots of feelings about Oxalis, and there's a lot of people have come to peace with it for sure. And this talk, I can do a whole talk just on, you know, Oxalis therapy. I won't go there, but I did want to finish my what I wanted to say was that in its native habitat, it produces seeds. There is something interesting about its ecological interactions here in the Bay Area, such that it doesn't actually get pollinated. It gets visited by pollinators, but it doesn't produce fruits. Like, it's not even inviable fruits. It's like doesn't produce any fruits or any seeds, and it's all spreading by underground bulblets. Hopefully some of you avid gardeners are well familiar with those bulblets. I can't see everyone's face but I was hoping to see like 1,000 head nods there, but let's see if I can change my gallery so I can see everyone a little bit better. No, I got a lot of videos off. I just trust that you guys are nodding along. Okay. If you aren't familiar with Oxalis oregana, it grows in redwood forests, and it emerges in early spring, just like this other oxalis, and it forms a beautiful carpet under redwoods. Anyway, I drive this point home really because it's such a good example of how lack of management has led to catastrophic problems in our urban ecosystems. And furthermore, now I am not a horticultural historian, but I did want to set the stage for why we are transforming so many of our gardens to native gardens, is because there is a history of the English garden did make its way to the Bay Area and to California in general. And this particular one, you don't see exactly that, but you see a lot of hedges. You see a lot of what, like these, they're not topiaries per se, but these big, can you see my mouse, by the way? I'm not sure. I'm kind of using it like an arrow. Where is that house? This is the Rockefeller house. I was kind of undecided if that was going to be something I openly told people, because I'm kind of talking negatively about it. But this is the Rockefeller house, so it's not in California. And what I was about to say, let's see, sorry, I'm going to pause and read a question in the chat, or I'll come back to that question at the end. Okay, so thank you for that question, and we'll come back at the end for questions. So anyway, what I was saying was, this is not in California. This is on the East Coast. But there are so many, there's old thinking about gardens that is shifting rapidly right now, that is very present still in the Bay Area. People have this idea of lushness being associated with this sense of green that doesn't really grow native to California. And that's because the plants in California are adapted to a dry, hot summer. And so they actually need to be pale green typically. So a lot of advocacy I do is just like trying to shift people's mindset to what their concept of lush is. Also, we have several, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go as deep into this as I'd planned, but I did want to point out there's some ivy growing along this, I don't know what you call this, porch area back here. I'm just going to leave that. I'm just going to move on. Anyway, so the big questions that I'm really kind of in conversation with you about are this, like, do we continue to pretend we are above nature? And this should question to elaborate, what I mean here is, like, our gardens are part of ecosystems. We are part of the ecosystem. And there has been a historical separation of the human landscape and our wild landscape. And with the increased need for more housing, in addition to the increased need for more habitat, I really encourage a merging of mindsets there. Is it okay to prioritize a desire to keep things clean or maintenance easy? This is a tough one because a lot of my clients really want a really clean look, and there are tricks to the trade to keeping your garden really like zippy and clean looking. Easy maintenance is, I really like to set people up for success when I build a native garden for them. And the cool thing is native plant gardens have the lowest maintenance, but the reality is if we are tenders of this land, like, that is a responsibility to cohabitate sustainably, and that's never going to be easy. And I think all of you probably know, I'm probably preaching to the choir by now with that. And then finally, how do we make thoughtful choices that promote habitat and diversity? That can go 1,000 directions. And here today, we're really only talking about gardens. The big answer to some of my big questions will rely on a shift in culture and a shift in systems. I thought it was important to put this in because it can be a big responsibility for an individual to feel like they have to, their land stewardship is going to solve really difficult fragilities in managing our native systems and cohabitating with the wild. Oops, sorry, that's an alarm of mine going off. Okay, good. But your garden is like, okay, during the election season, how many yard signs are all over? Your garden is an all year round yard side sign, and it is sending a message, and it's a powerful message, and it may not be obvious at first, but that shift over time, that results in a cultural change, and that cultural change will influence systemic change in our governance and the way we regulate landscapes. And so I ask all of you to be individuals that are lobbying for a wilder garden, a wilder landscape. And the perks of that are endless. I could talk about them all day. The beauty speaks for itself. The plants really speak for themselves. But this graphic, I stole this from the training I took to become a qualified water efficient landscaper, sponsored by the parks, the water partnerships, the local county water partnerships. It's a great course, and this graphic pretty much speaks for itself. That when you have sustainable landscapes, your water use goes way down, and your like maintenance goes way down, because your plants are already used to maintaining themselves in these systems. This is a great graphic. I'm going to move on in the interest of time, but I wish I can really linger and talk about it more. Okay, now I'm gonna get off my soapbox a little bit. We're gonna have some fun and play a game here, and it's called Let's Play Choose Better. This is a really over-the-top English garden on your left. Not saying you see many mazes like this in the Bay Area, but I think you get the point. And then on the right, kind of a more forward-thinking California native garden. So go ahead and type into the chat what suggestions you might have. We're going to start off easy. This is ornamental roses, very much part of horticultural history, long, deep history. Some people might feel a little upset at the idea of replacing them, but what native plant would be a great alternative to ornamental roses? Send it in the chat, people, and I'm going to narrate a little bit. My IT expert to my right here just asked me if this is a trick question. And I'm going to go with no, but maybe. Yes, the answer, Mary, thank you. California native rose. It's as easy as that, people. We have native roses in California, and let's see those come into our gardens, because they are as beautiful, and they have way more pollinator services than the ornamental roses, and take way less water and way less pruning. So there were some other suggestions. Oleander is actually not native to California. I know it seems like it is because it's all over alongside our freeways, but it's native to the Mediterranean region of Europe. California poppy, very great example, good suggestion. It's just very different than rose in the sense that it's an annual. Romnea, on the other hand, I'm going to ask you to hold on to that thought, because spoiler alert, that one's coming along. Okay. Tropical hibiscus. I see this one planted all over the Bay Area. What do you have? Does anyone know a California native plant that might be a great alternate to tropical hibiscus? Now, hibiscus is in the family. I'll give you a little bit of background while I give you a moment to think. It's in the family Malvaceae, or mallow family. That's relatives to chocolate, cotton, I'm forgetting one of the major ones, marshmallow. I just was on an airplane yesterday, and I was thinking about this on the big Hawaiian Airlines, I think it is, plane. You know, this is a iconic flower. Aha, okay, yes, checker bloom. Really good example, not exactly the one I was, that one's fantastic. Checker bloom's a great example, but yes, Arlene, you were really, your guess is right on the money. We have a native malva, and it's Malva acergentiflora. It's called island tree mallow. And just look at these two plants side by side. I mean, this native mallow is so similar looking to me to the tropical one, and it is easily available in our native plant nurseries, but for some reason, the tropical hibiscus is just so much more common in our mundane landscaping. Okay, and someone else said flannel bush. Yes, I threw flannel bush in there. There are several awesome members of the mallow family that would be great alternatives. By the way, there's not necessarily one right answer here. And California flannel bush is a fantastic plant, very low water needs, can be abrasive to some people's skin, so watch out for that. And does get very big. I have a client who emailed me many months later and asked me to move hers. So it's good to know they get very big. And fun fact about members of the Malvaceae, they are famous for having star-shaped trichomes. And that's what that picture on the right is. It's zoomed in. Okay, here's a classic lilac for you. Do you have any idea what would be a great alternative to lilac? Jim wastes no time. That is right. Yeah. Okay. I'm really glad the message is clear with this one. Lilacs are not native to California. But we have what we call the California, or what's the well, Ceanothus. This is the genus. California lilac is sort of a kind of a blanket common name for them, but they have many other common names. I gave only one species example, blue blossom, Ceanothus thirstiflorus. It is native to Alameda County, but there are a lot of species, as well as what we call nativars, which are horticultural varieties of native plants, selected usually for a variety of reasons. Of Ceanothus. So it's in the family Rhamnaceae. It is related to Rhamnus or Frangula, also some awesome California shrubs. And I unfortunately couldn't find a photo, but when you see this guy in flower, I want you, like a good botany student, to get out your hand lens, your magnifying glass, your binoculars, whatever you need, and get really close to that flower, because the individual petal is shaped like a spoon, and it is such a sweet thing. Make sure you get a good look at that. My IT expert would like me to remind you that it's also nitrogen fixing. So we are most familiar with our nitrogen fixing plants being in the legume family, but this is a great example of an exception of a plant in a different family that fixes nitrogen. And who doesn't want more nitrogen fixed in their gardens? Purple leaf plum. This is a really common ornamental street tree, usually planted in our hill strips along the sidewalk. On the left, I've got a picture of it in leaf. I think that's what it is. It looked like it. Yeah, that's it in leaf. But on the right, it's in flower. And they put out these big blooms of white pink flowers in the winter. And Mary is quick. We got some awesome native plant lovers already in this talk. The answer is Western redbud, totally different plant family. Okay, so here we're dealing with purple leaf plum is in the Rosaceae, the rose family, and that's relative of our almond, pear, peach, plum, apple, all of our beloved stone fruits and big fruits that we eat here in the summer and fall in California. But this is a legume. This is probably going too far, but I just feel the need to put it out there. Does not fix nitrogen, okay? But we love it for other reasons, for all the obvious reasons. It's just such a looker, am I right? I want to see more redbuds planted all over. If you're worried that you can't grow redbud, I want you to know that there are a slew of very happy, gigantic, healthy redbuds growing. Okay, it's like, what is that freeway? Is it the 588? I know my plants much better than I know my freeways, so I apologize. They're like underneath the freeway in Oakland. That's the point here. Okay, strawberry tree, Arbutus marina. Anyone have a guess? In the interest of time, I won't take too much longer. Yep, Mary, you are right. Arctostaphylos or manzanita is what I would suggest instead of strawberry tree. By the way, strawberry trees not related to strawberries. Those are also in the rose family, but they are they superficially resemble them. And there are many wonderful cultivated native Arctostaphylos species that are just readily available in gardens and put on a beautiful display. Now, Arctostaphylos densiflora is the example I chose here. It's a very popular one, and you know, it's rare in the wild. And I chose this one because there are a number of plants that are rare in the wild but are common in cultivation, and that's kind of a very cool I guess, bonus to having a native garden, that we are keeping a lot of genetic gene flow of these rare plants active. Okay, I'm going to breeze through because I want to be really careful with people's time. We had tulips on there. Don't see a lot of people growing these in the Bay Area as much anymore, but definitely part of the English border garden setting. And here we go. Who brought in Romnea earlier? We got Matilia poppy, the scientific name Romnea coulteri. It is a poppy, but not the California poppy that is so iconic. I mean, it's iconic to me, but it's not our state flower. Rhododendrons. Okay, this is my trick question, okay, because I was going to say, oh, what's a native alternative to rhododendrons? Rhododendrons is the answer. It's just important to know that we have 3 native species of rhododendron in California, and those are available in native plant nurseries, and I highly suggest you plant those if you're interested in planting rhododendrons. They do take a lot of water though, so make sure you have maybe a site that is a good fit for them. Okay, so Arlene, I have a few more slides. I will skip, yeah, I'm gonna skip a few. I also am not, I will be careful. I know that this one in particular, it opens up a pretty big discussion, and this is a whole talk in itself. But this is, I couldn't host this talk without putting in my public service announcement about Asclepias or milkweeds. This is Asclepias tuberosa, our tropical milkweed, and people plant this for butterfly food, monarch food, right? But unfortunately, it causes some phenological mismatch. So it stays in, long story short, it stays in flower like all year round, and then the monarchs get confused and they hang out all year round and they suck on this delicious nectar and pollen from the tropical milkweed when they need to be moving on to Mexico. So we need to get them on their feet with the native milkweeds. There are lots of them. Here's 3 that do overlap in the Bay Area. I mostly plant Asclepias fascicularis, the narrow leaf, and speciosa, the showy milkweed. I don't see Californica available in nurseries as often, although I'm sure it's around. Gosh, let's just pause and admire. These have amazing floral structure. Really get a good look at these flowers when you pass them by. Okay, everyone? Okay, I'm gonna skip some of my stories of invasive plants in the interest of time. Obviously, I went a little above and beyond with my list here. No one likes talking about invasive plants anyway. It's so depressing. Just kidding. I literally talk about them every day. Now, in conclusion, everyone, and thank you so much for your time and your just, interest in native plant gardens. Here's just a few tips. When you consider your native plant garden, make sure you're thinking on ecosystem levels, but also considering how your hardscapes affect your property and your, of course, and as such, environmental conditions. Think native, of course, but think even more native. Think locally native. But this slide has even more information I really wanted to make sure you got. Tips: plant in the fall or winter. You can obviously plant all year round, but you take so much more water. Your success rates are way lower when you plant in the warm seasons. Larger landscaping companies, it's important for their business to be planting all year round. Since I operate such a plant focused operation, I pretty much only plant with my clients in fall and winter unless they have some like way of convincing me. So I want to set people up for success. Make sure you're choosing healthy plant stock, that roots are not circling in the pot. If they're circling in the pot, make sure you score them with a pruners and rip them up before you put them in the ground. Sometimes the plants will get confused and think they're still in a pot in the ground, and then the roots don't take up water very well. It's a mess. So that's something we have less control over because sometimes the nurseries just have what they have, but it's really something to look for. Check your nursery availability first. That's like the equivalent of making sure you're buying, buying produce from the farmer's market instead of Safeway, basically. Do not amend your soils. This is the number one question my clients always have, or the number one misconception I have anecdotally observed is that people think that you need to amend your soil. They think clay soils of the East Bay lowlands needs fixing, that it's like not good soil. No, it's just clay soil. So choose plants that can tolerate clay soils. I cannot drill this one enough. The only plants that need amendments are vegetables and fruit trees, generally. Don't overwater in the summer. You'll kill your ceanothus. And finally, make sure you know your resources. I think a lot of people make horticultural and garden mistakes because they rely on non-vetted internet material, because anyone could start a plant blog out there. And what resources, you may ask? Here's some resources that I love and use. You hopefully are familiar with some of them. We've got a mix of websites, advocacy groups. They all, the native plant garden world is a small pond, and they all, get familiar with one. Reach out to me. I have my info at the end if you have more questions for where to ask. Get educated about your garden. Oh, I forgot I put in some before and after photos. I'm gonna skip to my last slide.
Actually, Allison, why don't you go ahead and include the before and afters? We all love seeing those.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I remember earlier today, I was like, maybe I should have put the before and after as the very first thing. So thank you to everyone for all of your attention. And as, here's my gift to you, my before and after photos of just a couple of gardens that I've been to recently. Some of my clients hire me to come back and do maintenance. So I really, then I get the time to kind of see how they're growing in. This is a client of mine who lives in North Berkeley and had owned his house for 20 years and never did anything with his landscape. And I had the great pleasure of being his plant designer. Oh, wait, this one's fun. This one's a video. I should have saved this one for last. This one's so good. This is what it looks like now. It's just brimming with species. It went from a dead lawn with one ornamental tree to, this garden is less than a year old. So it's still still like a gangly teenager, but it's already, it's still full of life. And these clients who were notably daunted by plants, by taking care of their garden, now they're out there every day weeding. They're my model students. Oops. Okay, wait, that's not what I meant to do. Here's another garden before, after. Now these clients didn't want plants that were higher than any of their windows, so they intentionally chose plants with kind of a lower profile. And I put this garden in because I really want people to know that no space is too small to build a garden. Believe it or not, this isn't even my smallest garden, but it's one of my smallest gardens. And this is what it looked like before. It had ornamental fuchsia actually in the background. That's that big gangly thing among other plants. And this is a very shady garden, so it had a little bit of limitations with our plant species selection, and it was very exposed to sort of urban elements. But this is what it looked like a few weeks ago. And I replaced the fuchsia with spiny gooseberry that I don't know if you can see it, but it's this plant in the lower left corner with the red flowers, and it's got a similar vibe. There we go. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, it is such a pleasure anytime anyone wants to, listen to me talk about plants. And so I thank you for your time, for listening, for your interest, and really, most importantly, for you all being stewards of your own gardens. Here's my information. I do run, oh my gosh, I have a typo in my own company name. That's not right. It's not Moona Pie. It's Moon Pie, just like the old-fashioned cookie. Moon Pie Gardens is the name of my business, and what I'm all about is native plant garden design, and I work with clients to do full installations. I also do consulting. I can do a small project consulting or just give people advice on plant selections, and it's really a joy to help people put on their plant goggles. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. It was a real pleasure.